be available.
Well, I was about to declare an interest, as I'm a trustee of the Francis Georgina Cook Trust, which has been storing the costumes from the Fashion Museum, but the trustees don't meet till Friday to discuss the future of the building, so I don't feel that my interest is compromised in the old post office application.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Right, I suppose statements, questions that will come in front of the
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind members of the public that speakers will be called immediately after the case officer has made their presentation, and the order of speaking and time allowed will be as follows. Objectors to an application will be allowed 3 minutes in total, and supporters of an application will be allowed 3 minutes in total. And if there's more than one objector or supporter, they must share the 3 minutes. I know there's a couple of items on the agenda where there's associated applications, so there'll be 6 minutes in total on those. Ward councillors not on the committee who have indicated they wish to speak may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes. Thank you.
Councillor Malloy, missed you.
So I was just going to say that in the interests of clarity, I'm also a trustee of the Francis Georgina Cook Trust, but I don't think that has a particular bearing on this proposal. No. Just to
thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. Can I see this correct record? Okay, that's Councillor Halsall, Councillor Warren. Those in favour, please. I think that's everybody else present. We're going to move on to the agenda now. And what can I say to councillors? Remember, when you're asking questions of officers at the moment, it's asking questions of officers, not making a speech. If we bear that in mind whilst we're actually dealing with issues. The first two items on the agenda are the former post office, the Fashion Museum, and both must be taken together. We'll vote separately at the end of them. The officer, please start presenting. Can we have the main screen on, please? Main television time.
Good morning, everybody. The first two items on the agenda this morning, which I'm going to present, are a planning application and an application for a listed building consent relating to the site at the former post office premises, number 27 Northgate Street in the city centre, Bath. This is in Kingsmead Ward. The proposal that the applications seek consent for is for change of use of the buildings from the current use, which is retail commercial use and residential apartments, to a new learning and institutional use to form the Fashion Museum for Bath. The applications are before the Planning Committee this morning due to the Council, Bath and North East Somerset Council, being the landowner, applicant and developer for this project. So to introduce the site context, the development site is identified by the red line on the plan before us. The surrounding streets are highlighted. You've got New Bond Street to the south of the site. You've got Northgate Street to the northeast of the site, and then you've got Green Street to the north. There are a variety of surrounding landmarks, including St Michael's Church, which is to the north of the site. You've got the Central Library opposite the site, and then the River Avon beyond. It's an aerial image introducing the site and the buildings at the site. So you can see New Bond Street to the bottom of the image, and that forms quite a tight-knit block with Green Street to the north of the site. The site is in the Bath Central area as designated under policy CP12. It's also in the primary shopping area and primary shopping frontage under policy CR3 of the local plan. It's an image showing you the site. You can see those two streets that run to either side of the site. The site includes the old post office, which is numbers 25 and 26 New Bond Street. It also includes adjacent buildings to the east on New Bond Street also. The post office building itself dates from 1927. It was designed by a government office architect, and it's noteworthy for being the first purpose-built post office in Bath, and also for its grand neo-Georgian architectural design, which was designed during the restrained interwar period. It's a Grade 2 listed building, and the adjacent buildings on North Street are also Grade 2 listed. There's also numerous other surrounding listing buildings, including St Michael's Church, which you can see on the right-hand side of this image. That's a Grade 2 star listed building. This is the Northgate Street elevation, so the northeast side of the site. You can see the neo-Georgian architecture of the building there, facing Northgate Street and St Michael's Church to the right-hand side of the image. And this is the New Bond Street elevation. You can see the existing shop at ground floor level. There's also a further shop at first floor level within the building currently. And then to the left-hand side of the image, you can see number 24 New Bond Street. That is also a Grade 2 listed building, but it's a lot earlier. It's a Georgian-era building dating from 1820. So this is further along New Bond Street, which is also included within the application site. So this is number 21 New Bond Street on the left-hand side of the image, and that shop is currently tenanted by Lakeland. Number 22 New Bond Street is excluded from the development site, so that is not part of the application, and no changes to number 22 New Bond Street are proposed under this application. And then number 23 and 24 are highlighted there just before the old post office building. And so this is an aerial image showing the site, the rear of the post office site from above. You can appreciate that tight-knit relationship with the neighbouring buildings on both Green Street to the north, to the left-hand side of the image, and the relationship with the adjacent buildings on New Bond Street. There is a large infill extension, which is ground floor and first floor, to the rear of the old post office, and that extension is used by the shops on New Bond Street. It currently provides additional retail space to number 21 New Bond Street, which is Lakeland, and also number 24 New Bond Street, which is another shop also. This is the courtyard at the rear of the building as it currently appears. You can see that ground floor extension with the curved roof light in the centre, and then the first floor part of the extension on the right-hand side built with brick. So this extension was added in 2005 as a sort of comprehensive redevelopment of this site. There's also some images on the right-hand side of the screen, which are in the shops in that extension, which currently provides retail space to Lakeland. In terms of the interior of the old post office itself, the retail use over the years has resulted in removal of a lot of the historic features that would have originally been present. You can see the images on the right-hand side of this screen show some of the original fixtures and fittings and those pillars. They're since removed. However, the one remaining feature that is present in the building still is the mosaic floor, which you can see the image on the left side as it currently stands. These are some more images showing the interiors of the shops as they currently stand. You can see there's a large double staircase which was added in the 2005 renovations. So that's a modern concrete staircase which has been added associated with the retail use. The shop units, the first floor shop unit is currently vacant, and the ground floor unit is currently tenanted by a clothing business. This is the first floor shop unit as it currently appears. So you can see it's a relatively empty space and has been subject to modern refurbishment. So turning to the residential uses at the site, these are located at second and third floor levels. So you've got a total of 6 flats which were introduced in the former post office building at the second story level. They were constructed in 2005. And then you've also got 3 further flats that are in number 23 to 24 New Bond Street. So located across the second and third floor levels of that property. The residential flats at the old post office building are currently vacant following purchase by the council, but these flats are not in a good state of repair. There's been some water ingress associated with the roof of the building, poor ventilation, and it provides quite a limited living standard for residents at the minute. So the applications for development and listed building consent this morning, they seek permission for change of use of those existing uses that I've run through. The development would comprise proposals for 3,392 square metres of learning and non-residential institutional use. So in other words, that is museum use, and the development is for the Fashion Museum in Bath. The development proposals would include works involving demolition of the existing rear extension located in the courtyard at the rear of the site, and development of a new extension in this area that would be part 2, part 3 stories in height at the back of the building. There would also be creation of a courtyard garden as well at ground level, so the new extension would not extend to the same parameters as the existing extension. A courtyard garden would be introduced in that space. And then the proposals also involve creation of new entrances to the building. So existing ground floor windows would be removed and a section of wall beneath those windows would be demolished to create new full-height entrance doors at the ground level to provide access from the street. The proposals also involve installation of awnings above windows and doors on both New Bond Street and Northgate Street to the former post office building. There would also be new plant equipment and solar panels introduced on the flat roof of the building. That would be located within a plant room store. And then there are also proposals to reinstate the flagpole that once existed on the roof of the building, undertake stone repairs and cleaning, repainting of windows, and installation of secondary glazing, as well as internal insulation works. So just to run you through how those plans will be laid out, this is the proposed ground floor layout. You've got the main uses at this level of the building include the reception area with the new entrances from New Bond Street and Northgate Street. There would also be a cafe at ground floor level. That's one of the main uses proposed in this area. The museum shop would be located at ground level as well, and also a service entrance leading to a back of house object handling space. There would be two new lifts introduced within the building. One of these would be for servicing and for emergency use. The other would be for routine use by museum visitors. And you can also see the proposed extension on this plan on the left-hand side. So that's the new extension that's proposed to be introduced, and the ground floor of that extension would be used as a learning and event space for the museum. And you can also see the courtyard garden that would be created adjacent to the extension and accessible from the extension. So these are the proposals for the new entrances to the building. The works are highlighted in blue on the elevation shown. So you can see the three new entrances that are proposed from New Bond Street. You can also see the awnings that are proposed to be introduced over the first floor and the second floor windows at the former post office building, and then you can also catch a glimpse of the plant enclosure that's proposed at roof level above. This is a plan illustrating the awnings and how they will be fixed and how they will operate. The development is targeting passive house standards for energy efficiency in retrofit projects, and this is the reason that the awnings are being introduced. So it's proposed to retain the existing windows but install secondary glazing internally behind the existing windows, and the new awnings are introduced to provide shade to the windows. This will prevent solar gain and ensure that light and the climate within the galleries can be maintained to provide appropriate conditions for display of the textile fashion museum collection. The awnings provide a passive solution to prevent light entering the building, avoiding the need for energy-intensive air conditioning systems. The awnings are retractable in full. They will retract into the head of the window, and they would only deploy linked to the building's management system. So the details that have been provided suggest that the awnings would only be necessary in the months of March to November, and outside that period in winter months, there won't be a need to use the awnings, so they would be fully retracted during the winter. And also, during hours of daylight, the awnings are only needed effectively when the sun's out, so they won't be deployed overnight also. So turning to the upper floors of the building as proposed, largely it's quite an open plan space that is proposed to facilitate the layout of the galleries. There would be a large central staircase in the middle of the building, and there's a series of visitor lifts, and then there's also some staff offices and meeting rooms proposed at this level, which would be adjacent to New Bond Street to the south of the site. This is an elevation illustrating how the extension will appear to the rear of the building. It's quite hard to illustrate this effectively because the courtyard space is very tight in terms of its geometry, but you can appreciate the simple form of the extension that's proposed, and also the image on the right side is the back of the former post office building, where a fully glazed curtain wall would be introduced to draw light into the rear of the museum space. The extensions themselves would be constructed with cross-laminated timber, and stone of ashlar bath stone facade would be constructed on the rear extension. So turning to consultation that's been returned on this planning application and listed building consent, we've received comments and support from both Kingsmead Ward councillors. There's been no objections from Historic England, the 20th Century Society, the Georgian Group, the Council for British Archaeology, or the Bath Preservation Trust. We've had 3 comments classified as neutral or in support of the development, and we've only had 1 objection to the planning application. There's a summary of the grounds of support and objection provided there, and that's also provided in the report also. Just to run through some images of how the development will appear and the assessment undertaken by officers. You've got an existing photo of the building on the left side. You've got a proposed image of how the development would appear afterwards on the right side. You can see the awnings there, and you can also see the new entrances created from New Bond Street at ground level. So the awnings do restrict some of the views of the original windows, and this was raised as a concern by the Council's Conservation Officer. And also the new entrances involve removal of the original ground floor windows, as well as demolition of the section of wall beneath the existing windows to introduce those new entrance doors. So both of those works are assessed to pose a degree of harm to the significance of the listed building. But in terms of the proposals for the new access, the option that's proposed is accepted to be the most harmonious option. It retains the symmetry which is present with those 3 openings at ground level, and it will also provide improved level access to the building. This is some further images of how the building will appear with those new awnings installed and deployed, as well as you can appreciate the new entrances there on the north gate side of the building. So the development is assessed to pose less than substantial harm to the historic interest in the listed building, but public benefits have been weighed against the harm posed and are assessed to be sufficient to outweigh the harm. The public benefits that have been identified include benefits for the city's economy, job creation during construction, as well as the operational phases of the museum, preservation and display of the internationally significant fashion museum collection, social benefits involved with a new use and custodian for the historic post office building, as well as energy efficiency and environmental benefits associated with the improvements to the buildings, which will reduce carbon emissions. The images that you're looking at now include a public realm scheme adjacent to the site. This is not part of the planning application that's before the committee this morning. This will be delivered separately through the highways approval process. However, these works are considered an essential part of the museum development, and therefore a condition is included on the recommendation that a minimum highways enhancement scheme is delivered prior to opening of the museum. These are some visuals of the rear extension as proposed. So you can see the new curtain glazed wall at the back of the building with the awnings. There's also a condition attached to the recommendation for the landscaping scheme. The space is proposed to host museum events and would be used by educational groups in the adjacent events and learning area. This is the rooftop plant that's proposed on top of the building to accommodate air handling equipment necessary for the museum systems. The plant room will replace existing plant facilities on the roof of the building. It's been set back from New Bond Street to ensure that it's not visible from the immediately adjacent street. So the plant room is not apparent from street level on either New Bond Street or Northgate Street due to the setback and the parapet. However, when you progress slightly further north, such as up Broad Street, you do obtain some views of the plant room on the roof of the building, and this has been assessed to pose some low-level harm to the character of the conservation area, and that has also been included in the heritage balance. This is a visual showing the ground floor of the museum, so how the ground floor will operate. This space would contain the cafe and the reception area. You can see it's been opened up and it's drawing light from both sides of the building and also from the courtyard garden at the back. And these are some visuals showing how the galleries may appear. The detailed design of the gallery spaces will be undertaken subsequent to planning the stage as the design is progressed. So the key issues which members need to consider with this application are the loss of commercial space in Bath City Centre, so there'll be loss of 1,945 square metres of commercial floor area in the city centre, so that's a key issue. Also, there is loss of the existing flats, which should be given significant weight, taking account of the current housing shortage in the district, but officers find that there are considerable economic and social and environmental benefits which have been demonstrated, such that the proposal complies with the Council's policy for retention of existing housing, which is policy H5. I've run through the heritage impacts, and there is less than substantial harm identified, but there are also significant public benefits in this case. There is some impact to neighbouring amenity of properties to the north of the site associated with the extension at the back of the building. However, this has been found to be acceptable by officers, taking account of the commercial use of these properties and the tight-knit existing context. Access, transport and servicing have been deemed acceptable, subject to conditions, and in terms of energy and sustainability, the scheme exceeds policy requirements. Therefore, the recommendation by officers before the committee this morning is that the planning application is permitted and the listed building consent application is consented. This is subject to conditions set out in the officer's report. That concludes my presentation, so thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Public speakers now. We have Rob Campbell. You have 6 minutes to start speaking, please.
Chair, members of the committee and members of the public, thank you for the opportunity to speak in strong support of this application for Fashion Museum Bath on behalf of Bath and North East Somerset Council. I am Head of Culture and Heritage Services, and over the past 4 years, my team and I have shaped a proposal that offers a rare opportunity to deliver lasting benefits for the whole of Bath and North East Somerset. This is the kind of project that places wait decades for. Culturally ambitious, economically credible, socially valuable and environmentally responsible. It secures the long-term future of the Grade 2 listed Old Post Office and transforms it into a major new cultural destination in the heart of Bath, the first major new museum in the city for nearly 40 years. We will create a genuinely welcoming civic space with exhibition galleries, learning spaces, events, cafe, retail and a courtyard garden for schools, communities and visitors alike. And all of this will be free to Bath and North East Somerset residents. The museum will showcase the Fashion Museum Bath collection, one of the country's great civic cultural assets. With more than 100,000 objects spanning over 4 centuries of fashion history, it's a collection of national significance. And this project means far more of it can finally be seen and understood and enjoyed exactly where it should be, here in Bath. The economic case is also equally strong. The museum is expected to attract around 250,000 visitors a year. That means more footfall in the Milsom Quarter, more support for local businesses, more jobs and apprenticeships, and a stronger visitor economy for the city and the surrounding areas. Our independent assessment points to benefits of more than £100 million through increased spending, employment, and health and wellbeing outcomes. Indeed, we are already seeing significant inward investment in the surrounding area, based in part on the Council's stated commitment to this new museum. We're also very, very confident in the project's viability, again supported by independent business planning and also the service's proven track record in running the Roman Baths, one of the UK's most successful visitor attractions. But this project is not only about buildings and visitor numbers, it's also about people. From the outset, we have focused on making sure the benefits are felt across the authority, through partnerships with organisations and communities, yes, in Bath, but also in Midsummer Norton, Radstock, Keynsham and beyond. It will open up real opportunities for young people through an ambitious schools programme, an innovative skills development programme, placements, apprenticeships and targeted support for those facing disadvantage in our local area. It will also deliver inclusive programmes for families, adults, communities, using culture to improve well-being, reduce isolation, support learning and build confidence and connection. We guarantee that those benefits and this project will extend beyond the city centre into neighbourhoods and communities across Bath and North East Somerset. In short, this will be an inclusive civic space that supports health, learning, resilience and opportunity. Environmental sustainability and accessibility are built into this scheme from the start, and many of the changes that are before you are linked to the aspirations in these areas. Rather than demolish and rebuild, the scheme chooses retrofit and reuse, preserving and invigorating these listed buildings while targeting net zero carbon operation and setting a strong example for the sustainable adaptation of heritage assets. Upgraded insulation and glazing, heat and light reducing awnings, solar panels, passive environmental controls and biodiversity improvements will all help cut energy use and carbon emissions. Just as importantly, the proposals in front of you also transform accessibility. If we're successful, then every visitor will be able to enter through the same welcoming public entrances with level access, lifts and inclusive facilities throughout. We've also introduced a range of intellectual and sensory access aids and adaptations into the scheme as well. The design, as you've heard, has been refined through extensive engagement with officers, Historic England and other key stakeholders, all of whom endorse the approach that we're taking and we put before you. So our heritage impacts have been carefully assessed and are limited. The public benefits are clear and substantial. Safeguarding listed buildings, improving access, and bringing this important civic site back into meaningful use. This is a thoughtful, deliverable, and heritage-led regeneration project, one that will strengthen the whole of Bath and North East Somerset's cultural offer, support the economy, protect an important landmark, and create lasting public value that will improve the lives of residents. For all those reasons, I ask members to support this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. We now have questions from councillors to officers. I remind councillors it's questions now, not speeches. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask how many permanent jobs were likely to be generated when the project is complete and the museum is up and running, school visits are going ahead and that kind of thing. And secondly, how they arrived at the figure of 250,000 potential visitors per year.
In terms of the jobs to start with, there is the current prediction is there would be 38 full-time equivalent job roles created associated with museum staff at the operational phase. So that's a prediction at this stage, and obviously once the museum is operating, those numbers might fluctuate depending on needs. We just have to take a prediction at this planning stage, but there will definitely be a good number of full-time equivalent job roles created. And then there's also, it's estimated that there would be 165 staff working on the construction phase of the development as well. So quite considerable job roles created during the construction project. In terms of the visitor numbers, I'm not 100% sure how they've arrived at the 250,000 figure, but obviously the Fashion Museum was previously housed in the assembly rooms, So there might be data that's available from that previous site, and also, of course, the connected visits to the other city centre attractions, such as the Roman baths. But yeah, I haven't sort of interrogated that figure in too much detail.
Councillor Hounsell.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, David. So I would like to ask a couple of questions relating to the what's deemed to be the less than substantial harm to the grading of listed buildings. So I'm talking about the exterior. First of all, the awnings. Notice from the images that they're can you just confirm that they're going to be neutral in colour to obviously reflect the bath stone? And I notice also we've got condition 21, which will control the awnings to a plan in terms of their management, about them being retracted when the sun's not out. I completely understand the reason for them, obviously to protect the collection. What was I going to say? I was going to ask you. Right, what was my question? Can you just confirm that it's a neutral material, and what material is it as well, please? Could you just confirm that?
So there's a condition, which condition number 6 on the listed building consent application, which secures details of awning fabrics. So that will, through that condition, we will receive details of what the fabric is and which colour it will be. That will need to be submitted to and approved by the council prior to installation of the awnings. The examples we've seen are canvas sort of material, and the applicant in their supporting information has used a variety of colours. There hasn't been one clear colour, so I don't think a final decision has been made on the colour as yet. But that will be secured later via that condition on the listed building consent.
The second question, the rotunda entrance is not going to be used, it's going to be decommissioned. Obviously, I can appreciate because of accessibility reasons. Is it just going to be, obviously the screen is going to go, is it just going to be left as a closed wooden door, but obviously it'll be an architectural feature on that corner?
Yeah, that's the current proposal, is that it wouldn't function as an entrance any longer, but it would just be left as existing effectively, and sort of restored as part of the proposals. Also, stone cleaning and repairs would be undertaken. So there's no current proposal to amend that. There have been proposals at other stages during the application to make changes to that entrance, but ultimately they've been removed from this current application, and we would have to consider any future application when it came forward.
Councillor Hughes.
There we go. Okay. Hi, David. Just a quick question on the flats. So you mentioned in your presentation, obviously the conflict with Policy 85, the loss of 9 flats. Is there any plan to mitigate that loss? I mean, I note the fact that we as a council have a project to repurpose space above the shops in Bath. So has there been any plan to mitigate the loss of the 9 flats?
So just to clarify, the proposals don't actually conflict with Policy H5. Policy H5 requires retention of residential properties unless a variety of other circumstances exist. And those circumstances include where a proposal demonstrates economic, social and environmental benefits. This project is identified to have demonstrable economic, social and environmental benefits, and therefore the loss of flats is actually found to be compliant with the policy in this instance. So we're not assessing, the recommendation is not that there is conflict with H5. Actually, the proposals are compliant with H5. It's just that the loss of housing needs to be given a significant level of weight, particularly in light of the housing shortage that we have in the district. The scheme is not associated with mitigation in terms of there being a direct subsequent project, which there isn't a policy requirement for that either. Policy H5 doesn't say that proposals for loss of flats must deliver replacement housing elsewhere. But of course the council is pursuing projects to deliver housing at various sites across the city. I think the committee considered several proposals for residential properties above commercial properties in the city centre at the meeting last month. There's various other schemes elsewhere in the city centre, Bath Quays North, etc., that are delivering new housing in the city centre. So whilst there isn't a direct connection and there isn't a policy requirement, that is taking place in an unconnected manner.
Councillor Malloy.
Thank you. Yeah, I have just a question about the awnings. So I see there is a condition, and there is also a condition about the goal management. So they kind of linked. My question links the two. Can we? Those are details for further down the line, I guess. But I think it's very important to know what they're made of and that they can be easily cleaned, because that would detract from the overall look of the building. So that's a detail, but I don't think it's actually included about making sure that they can be regularly cleaned. Thank you.
So there has been an awning management plan which has been submitted, and that was submitted largely to control the details of how the awnings will be used, to ensure that they're not deployed all of the time and deployed to their full extent at all times, because that would screen views of the windows. However, the awning management plan does actually also contain some details of cleaning, and it does indicate that the applicant will keep on top of cleaning and clean the awnings regularly.
Okay, no more questions. The item is open to debate. Councillor Warren.
Happy to. Thank you, Chairman. And the question we ask, is this a good use of taxpayers' money? However, that doesn't come into this, as is the Planning Committee. Will the building benefit from this? Absolutely. I think it's going to be beautiful when it's finished, and it's far from it now. So, therefore, the colour is you're happy to move the officer's recommendation.
The seconder, Councillor Crossley.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is an absolutely amazing proposal, and I think the whole department needs our vote of thanks for the imaginative and comprehensive way they've looked at what is a difficult problem in the centre of Bath. Any big development like this in the centre of Bath is always going to be potentially controversial because of a variety of competing views and opinions that have it. So I think the fact that we've done this and we've got virtually no objections at all, I think is again a big credit to the officers and the department and the way they've looked at this. And I think the way they've looked at this is completely groundbreaking. There's not many other departments, not just in the UK, and our director referred to this as being a national importance. I would say this is an international importance. This is one of the top displays in the world, not just in this country, in the world. And it's important that it is presented properly. And we've had, unfortunately, not the ability to go and view this amazing collection for several years now, for reasons that were beyond our control. But I think, actually, the fact that we've now arrived here shows that, in the end, I think the National Trusts have done us a long-term favour in addressing the problem of how we present and display this. And I think the use of the old post office is a really imaginative solution. What we've now got in the heart of Bath is a triangle of top visitor attractions. And the only figure I would query is actually the lack of ambition about 250,000 visitors. I would have thought we could easily surpass that over time, especially when linked in with the Victoria Art Gallery and the Roman Baths, which attract far more than that. So the loss of commercial and retail, I think, well, the museum is commercial. It will have a shop in it. It is retail. It is actually cultural. But it will actually bring a vibrancy to the whole of that quarter of Bath and the shops and the retail as people come into that area that wouldn't perhaps have gone before. The loss of 9 flats is always regrettable when we lose housing, but I think in the centre of Bath, I think that is something that we can just adjust to, and we've got plenty of other places where we can build flats, I would say. The heritage aspect, I think this will be winning awards for decades to come. When it's built, when it's opened and when it's flourishing, the design we've got here is international top quality. And as regards the amenity, the fact that it's going to be available for all residents of Bath and North East Somerset free of charge, I think is a testament to this council's inclusivity in the way it uses its assets to encourage its residents to come and view. And I would think it's not just this as a one-time viewing, with the changing displays, particularly the temporary displays, there's all sorts of reasons to come back and visit this museum many times. So I think this is a fantastic application. It's not often that I see absolutely nothing wrong in it at all. I think this, I can't find a complaint on this one. Someone complained about the colour of the awnings, but that is something that can be changed at a drop of a hat and is not really an issue at all. So I think this is absolutely top class. Well done to all our department in doing this, and it shows us that we can compete with the private sector and actually lead the way with the private sector with the innovation that we have in museums and culture. So I'm more than happy to second Councillor Warren's proposal to accept the officer recommendations.
Councillor Simon? Councillor Hughes?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that we focus on the planning application and not turn this into a debate on whether we should or shouldn't have a fashion museum in Bath. That discussion is a discussion for another chamber on another day. The issues of whether it's viable or not, they're not material issues for this committee. I think we should be focusing on the fabric changes to the building. And in that respect, I don't have any issues with this application, so I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Jackson?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's much better to have a building in a practical and useful way, and made accessible. I very much appreciate the steps that are being made to make it more accessible. And I'd just like to comment on the side, if I may, that it will be more accessible than the previous place, because that was up a hill and I used to struggle. So, yeah, it's a good thing in general principle, but I think it's right that we should, the devil, I think, is in the conditions. We need to make sure, first of all, that there's some kind of replacement for the 9 flats which are being vacated and no longer available for housing, and we all know how critical housing is in the centre of Bath. Secondly, I'm a bit worried about the seagull management plan, and, you know, what happens if they don't get a licence for moving nests and so on. Nobody's mentioned pigeons. They can do a heck of a lot of damage too. And the awnings, well, I think it would have been nice if they had been post office red, because this was the old post office and it would signal this. And actually, I thought it was the first purpose-built post office outside London. And it's also a sort of icon of the neoclassical style that was adopted during the war. So with those reservations, yes, I think I can support these application, and I hope we can get the conditions nailed down appropriate.
Thank you. We have no more speakers on this item. We have 2 separate votes taken as an issue. We take vote on the first item, Reg 03. Hang on, my glass, I'll make sure I got it right. Yeah, Reg 03. Those in favour, please?
9.
Okay, now on Reg 13. Those in favour? 9. Both items are carried. That's approved. I'm now going to vary the order of the agenda very slightly. I'm going to bring item 4 forward instead ahead of item 3. So So if the officer could do item 4 is ready, let's deal with that particular issue first, if we can, please. I banner down. Okay, Ben, when you're ready.
Okay, we're there now. Technical issues.
So we're looking at 39 High Banner Down. This is for a replacement dwelling. Just before we head into the presentation, there are a few updates I think I'll do now, just so they're cleared off. So first of all, I'd like to make some amendments to the conditions and add some additional conditions. So condition 2, which is concerning the obscure glazed balustrade, to add into there for it to include implementation of walls to terrace planting. So that's to amendment of condition 2. Amendment of condition 3, that's ecology, to reference the submitted reports, and then to add the arboricultural conditions. So one would be a compliance with the tree protection plan. 2 would be submission of soft landscaping scheme for the site. 3, submission of soft landscaping scheme for the roof terrace. 4, implementation of the soft landscaping for the site. And 5, implementation of soft landscaping for the roof terrace. And finally, a condition concerning the materials. In terms of the plans list, we've had a couple of some tweaks to the second floor plan and the roof plan, just to label the landscaping on the terrace with so that's version A. So to delegate authority to revise the plans list, to add those 2 revised plans in. Okay, so so replacement dwelling on the site. So so High Banner Down, mix of low density, medium density, generally properties on spacious site with mature landscaping. This property unusually is set at the back far right corner of the site. Just give you a flavour of the extent of landscaping and the spacious character of properties in this location. So some photographs to show you this is the existing building as seen from the highway, and also there's a view looking west within the site towards the neighbouring property, number 37. Photograph there, so that shows number 37 to the what's actually to the left-hand side, and number 26 opposite. Again, you see the mature landscaping around these properties. So we turn to the existing and proposed site plan. So the existing properties do be removed, including the garage, which is located to the right of the dwelling. So the new footprint is in the sort of right-hand corner as well. The plot coverage is actually not significantly different. We'll just come on to some details for that a bit later on. But this is quite useful. It shows the existing and the proposed. So the footprint is bigger, but it's not very significantly bigger. So this is a good illustration. I think it's quite useful. So the building includes a basement, and the vast majority of the basement is below ground level and not visible. There's some excavation involved to provide access to that basement, where you've got a three-bay garage. So that's primarily the only part of the basement that's going to be visible, but the basement is all below ground level, and there's excavation to achieve that. So the property is a two-storey property. It's not a three-storey property. It's a two-storey property with a basement, and I think that's quite useful. So we've had the existing shown against the proposed, so you can see from that the difference in terms of mass and scale. Footprint, just to cover footprint quickly. So the existing built development has a built footprint of 12%. Within the area, looking at numbers 27, 26, the western opposite, they have a coverage of 18.3 and 19.8. So the existing property is actually relatively small in relation to the overall site plot, and is one that is a property that's not had any extensions at all, or replacements, which is unusual in Ivanadam. Also, they've got the properties to the west of greater density, and there we've got a coverage of, looking at number 18, 21.5. So turning to the proposal, the proposed site coverage is 22%, or 25% if you include the basement, but most of the basement you can't see. So what we're looking at there is a 10 or 13% increase in footprint. So yeah, a 10% increase within a very large site, so not a significant change in the footprint of the building. So looking now at the mass and form of the building, this building is broken down into elements. You've got a single-storey element, which has a substantial roof terrace, and then you've got a smaller two-storey element with a dual-pitched roof. And with those elements being broken down to those elements, and the significant part being single-storey, the mass and bulk of the building is not significantly different to what you've got there at the moment. And in terms of increase in height, you're looking at the ridge height. The increase is 0.85 metres, so not significant difference in overall height either. So again, just from the side, so you can again see not significantly difference in mass and form, or not significantly greater in mass and bulk. So section drawing is quite useful again to show how the basement is set into the site. That's east-west. You also got north-south, again, shows the excavation of the site to create the basement, and you can see the lighter line which shows the surrounding ground level, which is maintained at the existing height where it's not being excavated. So turning to overlooking privacy amenity issues, this is a sort of very useful section. It shows that the terrace, usable part of the terrace, is set behind a planted area. Planted area, sort of green roof, with generally more planting than a typical green roof. There's an obscure glazed balcony, and then behind the planted area there's a wall that sort of separates the terrace from the planted part. And you can see from this drawing the sight line someone would have means that the views you get would be the longer, more distant landscape views. There's going to be very limited views into the neighbouring garden, or no views into the neighbouring garden. I should also sort of emphasise that the entire site is surrounded by mature vegetation, so between this property and the adjacent property to the west, there's a very significant mature coniferous tree belt. There are some reductions proposed, but trees are generally not going to be retained at a height of 8 metres. So you've got the setback, you've got the obscure glazed balcony, but you've also got a mature tree screen, so there isn't any screening anyway. But in any instance that you could, these provisions would ensure that any significant harmful overlooking would not occur. So this just gives you a visual of the sort of view you would get from the terrace. So it's not looking down into the neighbouring gardens, it's looking up at the more wider, more distant landscape. Some street scene elevations, existing and proposed, again I think are quite useful to illustrate mass and bulk is not significantly different. Then from Foss Way, again, if anything, a lesser bulk visible from that side. Some good visuals I think are useful, showing the existing and the proposed. And that's from the rear. This is axonometric illustration, just to give you some understanding. And that's from the street. Just in terms of materials, the the basement level, where the garage door is, etc., the bit that you can see of the walls there is a sort of a grey, contemporary, long brick. So that's going to be a lighter colour. The upper floors, primarily of a black timber cladding, and being a dark colour, that would give a very recessive appearance. So it would sit back into the landscape and be a lot less prominent than if it was a very light-coloured material. But notwithstanding that, it does have some lighter elements in there, so it's not entirely black cladding. So you can see on the first floor there, the walls there are between and at the end of the glazed sections are a light-coloured render. You've also got the ridged roof, which is in keeping, dual pitch ridge roof, in keeping with the character of the area. And then it just gives you some example of the use of such materials. There are examples in Bath of the use of darker render, dark standing seam roof, and it can be very effective, particularly where you've got mature landscaping, because it very much is recessive and sort of sits back into the landscape. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now the public speaker time. We have two speaking objection. We have Tessa Hampton and Phil Swash. You have 3 minutes between you when you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Tessa Hampton from Context Planning, representing neighbouring occupiers who cannot attend today. They do not object to development, but question why refurbishment was not pursued, which would be more sustainable in embodied carbon terms and better retain the character of High Bannerdown. They object to the scheme's scale, height and materials, which together make it wholly inappropriate for High Bannerdown, which has a strong, consistent character, single and two-storey dwellings, spaced in Bath stone and light render. The nearby replacement dwelling, though sympathetic in tone, shows how scale alone can cause real harm. What is proposed is a 213% increase in floor space in a building over 30 metres tall, fronted by a large triple garage. The committee report describes the ridge height increase as modest, but ridge height alone does not capture the building's true scale from the street. The proposal includes a lower ground floor, visible and accessible directly from street level. Measured from that floor to the ridge, the overall height is significantly greater than the existing, effectively a full additional storey. The existing pitch roof was replaced with a large flat roof and gable frontage, presenting a far greater expanse of wall and substantially increasing the mass. The proposal is seen as a large three-storey dwelling set on the upper brow of High Bannerdown. It is finished in dark timber cladding and zinc, materials alien to the streetscape that harm local distinctiveness and increase the prominence of this building. The application acknowledges that the boundary trees cast shade over the garden. This increases the likelihood of future removal. The scheme must be judged on the assumption they may not retain. A large upper terrace and windows face towards number 37, combined with the building being pushed closer to the boundary, neighbours will experience material loss of privacy. The terrace parapet is insufficient to prevent overlooking and boundary planting lies outside of their neighbours' control. Recent construction has caused issues, including blocking of the road. An occupier of number 37 has a life-threatening medical condition requiring vehicle access at all times. They're designated top priority by the ambulance service, and any delay could have significant consequences. If members are minded to approve, we request the construction management plan is secured by condition. Overall, the building will overlook neighbours and erode the character that defines High Bannerdown. The application has attracted significant objections from local residents, the parish council and the local ward member. I respectfully ask members to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. Members of the committee, my name is Philip Swash and I live at 26 High Bannerdown, directly opposite the proposed development. I'm not a planning professional. I'm simply a neighbour asking you to listen. Tessa's articulated the planning harm with great clarity. I want you to understand what this means in human terms for those of us who live here every day. High Bannerdown is not just a street, it's a community. It has character, intimacy and a quality of life that once lost cannot be recovered. This proposal would dominate and overwhelm it. We should also ask why an existing home must be demolished at all. Refurbishment and extension, as I have done at my property, would serve perfectly well and would be infinitely more responsible from an environmental point of view. Instead, we face the unnecessary destruction of an existing building replaced by something of a scale and character entirely alien to High Bannerdown. A building of this size, with its mass, its height and its out-of-character materials, will not sit within and alongside the current residential environment. It will tower over it. And once built, we must also ask what it could become. A development of this scale in what is a quiet, private, family residential area carries a real risk of future conversion to multi-occupancy use, fundamentally changing the nature of our community in ways no planning condition can easily reverse. And I respectfully urge the committee to refuse this application. Thank you.
We now have Keith Westerman, the applicant, please.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I am the applicant for the proposal at 39 High Bannerdown, and I've called Bath my home for the last 25 years, having settled here at the end of a career in the Royal Navy Submarine Service. I would like to thank the case officer for a thorough and assured assessment of the scheme, and for the time taken to consider the concerns of local residents, parish council and ward members. I'd like to start this morning by speaking in direct relation to the key concerns that's brought this application to committee. On overlooking, the site is wrapped on all boundaries by a mature belt of predominantly evergreen trees, which provide a genuine year-round screen between this property and its neighbours, but the design goes further than just relying on that. The first floor terrace includes a solid parapet wall at the western boundary, which physically prevents any line of sight into number 37's garden, and there are no first floor windows to the eastern elevation facing number 41. This home has been designed to feel sheltered and private, not a concession made under pressure. On overdevelopment, although the proposed building is larger than that one it replaces, the design is deliberately composed to reduce the perception of any additional mass. The building is broken into two modular elements rather than presenting it as a single large volume, and a substantial proportion of that total floor area sits below ground, tucked into the natural fall of the hillside. The submitted street scenes and public right-of-way visuals show a building that, despite its increase in size, does not dominate its setting. On building height, the street scene visits show clearly that the building does not read as significantly taller from High Bannerdown. The modular composition, the setback of the upper element, and the dark recessive materials mean the building sits quietly within the landscape. The view from the Fossway demonstrates how effectively the mature pine canopy screens the rear elevation. This is not a building that announces itself. On building performance, replacing rather than retaining the existing dwelling delivers a substantially better home by every measurable standard. The new dwelling will be airtight, well insulated, fitted with mechanical ventilation and solar generation, dramatically reducing its energy demand and carbon footprint over its lifetime. This simply cannot be achieved by working with the existing, structurally unsound, subsiding shell that we have. On neighbourhood disruption, the construction programme will be managed carefully via considerate contractors through construction management plans and controlled site access, with the specific aim of minimising disruption to the street and its neighbours. A new build project, properly sequenced from a cleared site, is a fast, more neighbourly way to deliver this than unpredictable retrofit works would ever be. This is a home I've thought about carefully in a city I love living in. I therefore respectfully hope members will feel able to support it. Thank you, Chair and members.
Thank you, Chris. We now have Councillor Kevin Guy, Ward Councillor. 5 minutes, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Is that on? Yeah. Great, thank you very much. As committee members will know, I very rarely come to planning committees because I rely on your expertise to do this in the superb job that you normally do it in. And I have absolutely zero objection to a house being extended to accommodate family growth. More than happy to see that. So I'm not asking for you to necessarily object against the application, but I would ask you to apply some pressure on the officers to make sure there are strict conditions applied. And one of those that has been raised with me consistently with residents is the materials being used. As you've seen, very dark black zinc style materials, which are extremely out of keeping for that part of Bath Eastern Village. There's also the scale and the dominance, and I appreciate, as you've heard, the applicant has worked quite hard to address those issues. And there's also the future use issue as well that residents are very concerned about, whether the committee can apply a condition that rejects it from being used as a home of multiple occupancy in the future. As it's a brand new build, that might be possible for you to ask for that. But overall, I think if you guys are able to apply specific conditions to this property to ensure residents' concerns are heard, then I have no objections to a family house being built, but with sensible restrictions in keeping with a residential area. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. No questions from Councillor Officer. Remember, it's questions, not speeches. Councillor Jackson.
This is where a site visit was so useful for Councillor Hughes and myself, because we got the dimensions, but I wasn't quite clear, just because of this large screening hedge on the right-hand side as you face the front door of the property, how the current building and the proposed building would relate to any building line of the adjacent house on the right-hand side, whether it's projected forward or roughly in line. That's the first question. Secondly, I'm not. Is it a problem that they're going to introduce a new material, this black timber cladding? But thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, am I not right in thinking that if this were to be used as an Airbnb or a house in multiple application, there'd have to be a change of use planning application?
Okay, so I'll sort of run through those. I'll talk to the building line once we've got the slides up on the screen. In terms of in terms of materials, you know, in terms of High Bannerdown, you've got the use of stone, you've got the use of render, but there are examples actually of, you know, in lesser degree of brick and also of timber cladding. I think we've also got to look at the, you know, the mass form of the building, and the fact that this uses, you know, has a ridged roof. But actually, in terms of this location where we're higher within, the land is at a higher point within High Bannerdown, actually the use of a dark recessive material actually will make the scheme less prominent. And given it's a very landscape site, it will sort of blend into that landscaping. And as I sort of alluded to, it doesn't just have dark sort of black cladding and black standing seam roof. It also has some light render in there, and it also has the grey bricks at the part of the basement that you can see where the garage is. So, you know, even within the World Heritage Site, you still do get a mix of materials and instances where you get contemporary schemes that that relate appropriately in terms of siting, mass and form, but use a different material, which actually, if it's subtle in this instance, it is appropriate within the overall character of the area. So, in terms of the building line, the building is moved slightly further forward, but there's a variety of so I just have to talk to my screen in a moment. Get the right plans up. Okay, so yeah, so there's a variety of building lines. This is still set back from the frontage. If you look at the properties to the left, number 37, that is set much further forward, and the property to the right, that's in a substantial plot, and that's also set substantially back from the frontage. So although it's going to be close to the existing property, and it's quite unusual that existing property being set so far into the back corner, but it sits comfortably within the site, with the frontage set clearly back from the street frontage. So it's very much in keeping with the variety of building lines within High Bannerdown.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. A couple of questions. So, obviously, one of the issues focused in the presentation was the potential overlooking of the adjacent property from the roof terrace, and it seems that the solution has been two-stage. One is the roof terrace planting, which will not allow you to actually approach the barrier, and the second is the existing tree line. So on the roof terrace planting, is that conditions that it has to be put in, it has to remain?
Yeah, so I put that forward in the extra conditions proposed. There's a landscaping scheme submitted for the roof terrace, and also a condition requiring that to be implemented and maintained.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the trees, which is your secondary level of protection against the loss of amenity, is there a condition that if any of those trees were, for any reason, have to be removed, that they would have to be replanted?
There's not a condition such as that. I think you need to sort of understand that actually from the applicant's point of view, they don't want to be overlooked, so they will want to retain a level of tree screening. They've submitted a report for maintenance of the trees, but that retains them at a height of 8 metres. It is a substantial tree belt, so it's actually I think it's very unlikely that we're going to see those trees lost. It's highly unlikely. They're not protected because it's not a conservation area. There aren't sort of TPOs within the site. But I think because it's such an unlikely situation, I don't think there needs to be protection on those trees. It would be very difficult for a planning condition to do that. You'd have to consider potentially putting TPOs on the trees, but I don't think it's necessary in this instance. There's a mature landscaping screen right round the site, and there's really no reason, very unlikely, that the applicant's going to want to significantly remove those. We've also got a condition requiring 5 replacement trees, because there are some smaller trees to be removed within the site, so that provides some succession planting within the site. And also with the terrace, as you said, we've got the extra protection in that you've got that setback with the planted area, and also the obscure glazed screen, which means that it's physically impossible to look down into the neighbour's garden.
Okay, thank you. And secondly, just to clarify, obviously Councillor Guy the Ward Council suggested that you should condition a change in materials to change it from the dark materials. I suggest that's not something we can condition, is it?
We can't. I mean, with the extra conditions, I've suggested a condition with approval of details of the materials, but we can't require them to be completely changed. It would just be the specific details of those materials. So we can't change what's in front of us in terms of that's what they're proposing is a dark cladding. Sort of dark timber cladding, black timber cladding, and sort of black zinc standing seam roof.
If the applicant chose to, within the current application, they could change the colour scheme of those materials or not?
That would require a deferral of the application and discussion with the applicant, but I don't think there is an issue with the materials. I think the materials they're using are entirely appropriate, because they're dark and recessive. We've got examples in Bath where we've used some dark and recessive materials. And also, it's not the only materials used. We've also got the grey bricks, and we've got some light-coloured render at the first floor level. So I think the materials being proposed have been sort of carefully thought through and are entirely appropriate, because with a dark recessive material, it goes away from you, whereas if you have a very light-coloured material, it sort of comes towards you and is much more prominent.
Councillor Simon?
Is your recommendation now effectively to delegate permit because of the additional conditions you've produced, and which I don't think we've seen in a supplementary report?
That's correct, delegate to permit, yeah.
Councillor Horsell?
Yeah, thank you. It's just going back to the trees again. The proposed replacement dwelling is going to be moving away from the boundary, but obviously we're going to see quite a lot of excavation work. Are we reassured that there will be no adverse impact on the roots of those boundary trees, which obviously we're very keen to retain?
Yeah, so a lot of the excavation is actually away from those boundary trees, or is where the building is at the moment. So given there's an existing building there with foundations, our arboricultural officer has not raised concerns about the excavation causing issues. Chair, if I could just say at this junction, it has been mentioned about a construction management plan condition, so I'd propose to add that to the list of conditions proposed, the construction management plan condition.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. But am I not right in thinking that the May tree, which is quite mature, flowering hawthorn, is going to be removed, and there's another mature tree as you go into the current front door? Is that going to be replaced or what or not? Yeah. Otherwise, I'm quite happy to propose that we accept the resolution to delegate.
Other questions, Councillor Jackson?
I've got the plans on the screen now, so it shows there's 5 smaller trees within the middle of the site, front middle of the site, which will be lost, but there's a condition we're attaching to acquire 5 replacement trees within the site, and a scheme to be submitted for those.
Councillor Hawthorne.
It's going back to the concerns that have been raised about potential uses. Obviously, the proposal is for a C3 family dwelling house. It's outside the city boundary, so therefore it's not subject to Article 4 direction. But because it's a new build, is it reasonable that we could impose a condition to stop it from being converted into an HMO under permitted development? And secondly, can you just confirm that if there was thought of it becoming an Airbnb, now I run an Airbnb from my own house, it's still my house, I just rent it out on a short-term basis at weekends, so it's still a C3 use. If this was to become a permanent Airbnb or guest house, would that require permission in its own right?
Okay, so yeah, you're right, it's not in the Bath boundary, so it's not covered by the Article 4 directive, so there would be a permitted change from C3 to C4, a small-scale HMO. We couldn't impose a condition to prevent that because that is permitted development. I think it's very unlikely that someone would go to the expense and time to build this family dwelling to then convert it to an HMO. But that falls outside of our control. But I think it's a very unlikely situation or circumstance. Councillor Hansel, there was one more question which is just alluded
about if it became a full-time Airbnb, would that be a change of use requiring permission?
Yeah, so typically because there isn't a different use class in terms of short-term residential accommodation, if it's used as a dwelling, then typically one would be able to do that without the need for permission. It's only where something becomes more like what we think of as a party house with significant occupancy, significant turnover of guests, that there's a material change in character where one could see that one could determine that there's been a change of use. But in most circumstances where it's being occupied, being let out as an Airbnb on a short-term basis for use fairly similar to a dwelling use, then that wouldn't be development, that wouldn't require planning permission.
Okay, as there are questions, it's now the debate. Councillor Jackson.
Well, I think we have to look at this in the long term rather than in the short term, and also we shouldn't construct hypotheses about what its future use might be, because it might become a party house. I find that a bit of a stretch of the imagination, actually. And when we consider the Swainswick application that came in at the last meeting, that was a large family who were occupying the whole of the extended building, and we didn't judge against the officer's recommendation to accept that one because of what it might become, and well, its location, of course, is stunning. But anyway, I think we need a certain amount of consistency here. I think a good case has been put forward. Now, in the short term, it's ecologically not very good to demolish a house, and we have to think about climate change and all the rest. But when we think about what is proposed, it's sort of semi-nature as a passive house with the way that basement is constructed, ground heating pump, and we could see, Councillor Hughes and I, that the current building is really, however much you double glaze it or triple glaze it, it is still going to leak heat. So I think overall the long-term improvements mean that we should accept a delegate to permit resolution. I don't know, I've forgotten the other point. But I think when we left the building, Councillor Hughes and I sort of drove around the area a little bit because we were trying to find our way back to Bath, to be quite honest. And there is a considerable variation in the different houses, the different plantings. So I don't think that the style of this house would freak out at people. Of course, as a glaucoma sufferer, I'm quite interested to go back on the annual tour in a couple of years' time because I can't see black. So I'll just see a floating island up at the top of on the roof terrace. But I think with the right conditions, this is the delegate to permit is the right decision.
You have now moved that, Councillor Johnson, have you? Have you moved delegate to permit? Thank you. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Simon? Any other speakers? Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I think the site visit was certainly quite useful. I think certainly looking at the existing property, it was in quite a poor state. So I think there's certainly a lot of benefits from a rebuild in this situation. I do share some concerns about the colour scheme, but the officers explained the reasoning for that. I did see other properties, at least one other property with a dark wood panelling on the sides in the area, and it didn't look out of place in this particular setting. The site itself is quite secluded, and as Eleanor pointed out, there's quite a wide range of different styles of property in this area. So I'm quite happy to support this application.
Councillor Horsall? Thank you.
I think I will be supportive of this application on the basis that we are reinforcing a number of the conditions, particularly the construction management plan, and hopefully that will address the concerns that have been raised about potential loss of amenity, impact on the boundary trees, and also, any highway concerns that have been flagged up, even though we've had no highway objection. In terms of the materials, I do agree about the regressive nature of the black. It may have been preferable to have a lighter material, but I don't think that the material and its colour alone is grounds for refusal, so I'll be supporting the application.
Councillor Malloy?
Yes, in principle I'm supportive, but I just would like to be reassured about the construction management plan, but I guess that's part of delegate to permit, isn't it? Because you've said that you will include that, but we don't have the details, do we? Yet. But I think, assuming that that's all fine, yes, I will support it.
So would use our standard construction management plan, which is tried and tested and is comprehensive.
Thank you, Ben.
And so just come back, and that will also...
No more questions, Councillor Malloy. I'll let Ben check this now. But any more speeches? If there's no more, we'll go to the vote. It's delegate to permit with additional conditions applied. Those in favour? No. That's carried, that's permitted. We will now take a 15-minute break. We haven't stopped yet, and we will then, when we return on item 3, we will work through the conclusion. 15 minutes, okay? Danielle, do you want to make a presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this is item 3 on the agenda, and the application is for a permission in principle at the land east of Providence Bungalow. So a permission in principle is we can assess the obviously the principle of the development in relation to land use, amount of development and its location. The permission in principle stage is not the granting of consent. That would come later at the technical detail stage, and at that stage is where we would see everything else that we would usually see as part of a full application. So the permission in principle proposes the erection of 2 dwellings. So this is the site located in Radstock, off of the Froome Road, and then off of Maple Rise, which is sited to the east. So the red line outline will make sense as I go to the next slide for its shape, and then you can see on the east, on the right side of the screen there, the aerial image. The site is located outside the housing development boundary and is within the conservation area in character area 7 of the Worthington Collieries of the conservation area character appraisal. And then this is just a wider aerial image of Radstock, site indicated with the red star. As you can see, it's the east of Radstock with the centre towards the west. So this is an existing block plan. So the dwellings that you can see where my cursor are, so these 4 dwellings here, this site already has permission in principle and it is currently subject to a live technical details consent. The proposed permission in principle of this application is located in this triangle piece of land here. So this is an indicative proposed block plan. So yeah, this is just for illustration purposes only, just to show how the site could accommodate 2 dwellings. And then just moving on to some site photos. So here, this is the turning head of Maple Rise. You can see the gates there, which is the access to the site, and then just closer in to those access gates. And then on the right, you can see the neighbouring property, which is the end property of Maple Rise. And then again, so the image on the right is the other side of those gates as you meet the other gates into the field of the application site. So where my cursor is on the screen, that is the location, approximate location of the proposed 2 dwellings, and then to the right of that is where the permission in principle already stands for the other 4 dwellings. And then just a wider view of the site itself, so you can start to see the other dwellings existing that are neighbouring the site, and that would kind of line up with the other dwellings that are approved, the 4 dwellings along that other cul-de-sac. And here you can kind of see the height difference in the application site itself, and then the existing dwellings adjacent to the access. And then on the right is just turning around the other way, looking up the access drive. And then this is Maple Rise, and the existing dwellings there, and then that road leads to Froome Road, which is, and yeah, this is the access into Maple Rise here. Officer recommendation is to permit. Any questions?
There's no public speakers. Questions of officers? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I can appreciate the work that's gone into this report, but I would note that even in the presentation there was a reference to Maple Drive, which is in Westfield, not Maple Rise, which is the location here, and I think this is unfortunate in the report. But what is even more unfortunate is, although you know, there's been an effective presentation and you've got that map there, it doesn't convey just how steep this hillside is, and therefore why it's very unfortunate that there was no site visit made.
Please.
So may I propose that we defer this application so that the committee can make a site visit, walk up and down the road and understand the location.
Will be clear to questions. Councillor Simon.
Chair, can you just remind us the blue outline on the plan you're showing? What's the status of that? It covers both the field where you've got permission in principle and another field, I think.
So the blue outline is the indication of the applicant's ownership. The permission in principle already granted is cited within this triangle where my cursor is. There was a permission in principle for the site up here, which was refused.
Ah, okay. But so effectively, and what were the reasons for that refusal?
That was due to impact on conservation area and the hillside and the amount of development.
But your assessment for these two additional buildings, and perhaps we can go to your next slide, which show, is that they wouldn't materially affect the perception of the area.
Yeah, that's correct. Officers have considered that a similar assessment with the PIP that's already been approved is that this triangle area of land is quite distinctive, and in that it is bound by residential development, and there's quite a clear distinction of where that development could or should finish, and that these two dwellings in the even smaller triangle piece of land, now defined by the additional permission in principle being granted, wouldn't significantly harm a conservation area when it gets to technical detail stage when we're considering design.
So this extension, both the current PIP and this one, would read as an extension of Maple Rise?
Correct.
Yes, okay. I should say I door-knocked Maple Rise and everywhere else in Radstock 6 years ago. So,
Councillor Hawthorne.
Again, it's just following on from the, it's interesting about the site in blue, which was refused. You just confirm again that the two properties are outside the settlement boundary, and I'm seeing obviously a spur going northwestward. That is a parking space for the proposed house in principle. It's not going to be a way of creating access into the blue area in the future.
Yeah, so that's correct. So the indicative plan here does show parking spaces. Obviously that could change, and that would be subject to technical details assessment at that stage, but that does show parking spaces, correct.
Sorry, wrong one. That's the other question. Then Councillor Jackson, you want a motion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Malloy, it's your hand.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just trying to understand. For this particular application, it would be permission in principle for two dwellings, and that is in they would probably be situated in that small red triangle at the end of the strip with the triangle, is that right? But the other part, the lower part of the blue area, so the top part of the blue area, the permission was refused, is that right? But the lower part of the blue area, it wasn't, or have I got that wrong? I'm just trying to work out in principle, and for that total area, how many dwellings would we be effectively approving?
This application proposes two dwellings. At the moment, there is no development on site, which is shown with the site location plan. The four dwellings that have already got permission in principle and subject to current technical details consent are located in this portion here where my cursor is. There is no live application for the north of the site, and there is no permission in principle granted for the north of the site either.
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
Well, I think the difficulty of understanding this site is the reason why there should be a site visit. I also think, Chair, that as you have established the principle of having site visits before decisions are taken, which actually works out very well, usually, means we ought to do a site visit now, and or rather mean on the next round of site visits, and then consider this application at the next meeting, because you really need, incidentally, there was a badger set up there, but you really need to stand there and see the rural context, I think, and how steep the hill is. So I propose we have a site visit and then decide.
Do you want a second for that? Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Hughes. Open the speakers now. On the motion to site visit. Okay, Councillor Simon.
I think we've got sufficient information. I think that, granted that there's permission in principle for the bulk of this field, and that the really sensitive field that runs down towards the stream isn't being challenged. I think we don't need to defer this, so I will oppose Councillor Jackson's proposal and propose acceptance.
Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, but you haven't seen the sites, and you don't understand the topography of the sites, and the photos hint at it, but you really need to be on site to understand how this can affect the conservation area, what the effects will be. And that's impossible to do without a site visit. We have a principle now of site visits, and I think we should maintain that, and this should be visited. Thank you.
Councillor Hensel.
It's really a question that maybe some of the other councillors who are proposing a site visit can answer. We've already got permission in principle for 4 properties there. So presumably that's already been tested in terms of its impact of the location. So what do you can you convince me there's something different about this little corner than the others that have already got permission?
Councillor Horsall.
Similar argument. We've already tested the 4 in principle, which is subject to technical detail. It's deceptive because of that red line strip, and I know that is the application boundary, so obviously that's what we focus on. But we are talking a sliver of land against a larger piece of land, probably 3 times as large, which has permission in principle. And I don't feel there's any need for us to defer for a site visit, because I really do feel that 2 additional dwellings against those 4 is not going to have any marked difference on the impact on the conservation area.
Councillor Jackson, you're summing up now.
In 2006 rejected this area because of the impact it would have on the green hillside of the green hillsides of Radstock, and that these should be preserved. But that, of course, is a long time ago, and there's been a lot of legislation since then. What there is also, and I think what probably concerns every single councillor in this room, is a sort of despair about you can never change anything, they won't listen to us, there's no point in us coming and objecting today because it's already going to go through because they've already got a PIP. And the town council, I know, will think much the same as Westfield Town Council, Parish Council. Why should there be one rule for Bath and a different rule out here? If we have site visits regularly before applications, which applies in Bath, and we've seen the Banner Down one and so on as in principle, we're going to look at Stanton Court, then the same should apply here. And I really think you need to come and stand and appreciate the context at the corner. This is sort of development by creep, and it ought to be stopped. But that I'm prepared to revise my opinion when I see how things work out. When we do the site visit, I'm not prejudging it, I'm just saying we should have the same depth of consideration as other.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. We're going to vote on deferral for site visit. Those in favour?
6, 7.
Are those against? That is deferred for site visit. We're now going on to items 5 and 6. That'll be Stanton Court, Stanton Drew. We'll change the officer, please.
I'm ready, Chair.
When you're ready, Chris.
Thank you. So items 5 and 6 before committee today are in relation to Stanton Court Care Home in Stanton Drew. The proposal is a dual application for planning permission and listed building consent for the erection of a two-storey rear extension following the demolition of existing parts of the building and associated works, including landscaping. Item 5 is the planning permission. Item 6 is the listed building consent. So on the screen is a plan to give some context of where the site is. The proposal is located on the northern edge of Stanton Drew. There's numerous planning constraints which affect the site. Most pertinently is that the site is, the host building is grade 2-star listed. The site is also within the Stanton Drew Conservation Area and is within the Bristol and Bath Greenbelt. There are 2 scheduled ancient monuments in proximity to the site, one of which is the medieval bridge on Bromley Road, which is also grade 2-star listed, and then the Stanton Drew stone circles, which are located to the east of the site. I've included some pictures of the existing building. So it's currently in use as a care home. It was converted in kind of the mid to late 20th century. So this is a view of the front of the building and photographs of the rear on the left-hand side there and the side, the northern elevation on the right-hand side there. The conservatory and single-storey projection, which are shown in those photographs, are later additions to the care home built in the 20th century. On the screen is a existing site plan which in blue shows the footprint of the proposed addition. It is a little hard to see, but it's located on the rear or the eastern elevation of the building. This plan shows the proposed site, so with the addition on the rear of the building, as well as the proposed landscaping works. And some more photos of the site for context. So these are taken from the terrace area looking out east towards the grounds of the building. There's a number of trees on the site which are going to be safeguarded through the proposals. They're sufficiently far away that they won't be impacted once tree protection measures are put in place. The extent of the addition would come out to the edge of the paved area there, and then the landscaping works would continue just a little bit further than that. Members will note from the report that there was some concerns raised by an adjoining neighbour. This photograph just shows the relationship of that property to the site. So it's the windows on the left image there on the two-storey element of the building. The single-storey element is owned by the care home and operates as a staff room. So when considering potential impacts on residential amenity, we're focusing on the proximity from that two-storey element and those windows. So onto the proposal itself. This is an existing front elevation, and this is the proposed front elevation. So there is no change to the front elevation of the building, which is its most architecturally significant elevation. To the rear, this is the existing view, and this is the proposed view. So it is a substantial extension. It's set down into the ground at the rear of the property, What that does is it reduces its landscape impact and also allows more of the listed building, the host building, to protrude above it, which maintains its dominance visually. From within the site, the area above existing land level is approximately 3 metres in height, so very comparable to a single-storey element of kind of typical proportions. And moving on to the side elevation, this is as existing and proposed. So the rationale for the application is that at the minute the accommodation within the care home is of a not particularly great standard. Rooms are very small and they're generally without en-suites. The corridors are also particularly narrow. So the rationale for this application is to maintain the existing number of bed spaces within the care home, which is 30, and it would include internal alterations to the existing building so that 15 of the bedrooms are accommodated in that, and then 15 new bedrooms would be placed in the extension, so maintaining 30 overall across the two parts of the building. Moving on to the final elevation, this is the south elevation, and a section through there which shows that against ground level again, it would be a fairly limited height, 3 metres. So I've included some further detail of the retaining wall. As I say, it is going to involve excavating down into the ground. This shows that the retaining wall would be set away from the windows of the building, which allows lots of natural light and views out towards the trees from that lower ground floor area. One of the areas of concern that's been raised by the Conservation Officer is whether the addition would result in the need for any underpinning or further structural strengthening of the Grade 2 star listed building. This has been unable to be conclusively bottomed out at this stage. The extent of investigation that would be required would be tantamount to undertaking the excavation works. So this current proposal does not provide consent or planning permission for any underpinning or structural strengthening. If those works are required, it will be a case that the applicant needs to submit a further application for listed building consent. Moving on to floor plans. So this is the second floor plan. We're working from the top of the building down, so you can see that the proposal is of a fairly large footprint at the rear of the property there. It would benefit from a green roof, which reduces its height and massing as far as possible, and also helps integrate it with the greenery of the garden space in landscape views. As I mentioned earlier, the internal configuration involves removing a number of internal partitions. These are understood to mostly be modern interventions from conversion of the building originally to a care home. Moving down to ground floor level, so you can now see on the right-hand side how the extension would be laid out to provide bed spaces for residents. And as you can see, those bedrooms are of much more kind of appropriate size and also have benefit of en-suite bathrooms, as does the bedrooms which are in the main building as they're upgraded now. A similar layout at lower floor level, again, just providing residents with more space than at present. Another key benefit of the scheme is that whilst the care home has a lift at the minute. This doesn't afford access to all parts of the building. It's also undersized and is insufficient to accommodate a stretcher or a bed, for example. It can also be temperamental at times, from what I understand, and so this proposal would enable the provision of an appropriately sized lift within the building. Coming to the end of the slides here are some visuals of the proposal. These are, they don't show the full site context, so are taken as indicative only at this point, but it does give a bit of a feel for the design intent and kind of scale and massing of the building. In terms of materials, the proposed extension would be formed of a natural stone plinth, timber cladding to the upper storey, and then beneath a green roof, as we've said already. The addition kind of curves around from that northern elevation to meet the alignment of the south part of the building. Just to touch on a couple of other considerations, so as I mentioned, the proposal is within the green belt. Officers concluded that the site constitutes grey belt, and therefore the development is appropriate within the green belt. The principle of development is supported by the adult social services team, who consider that there is a considerable need for care home bed spaces in this part of the district. While it doesn't introduce more bed spaces, it is safeguarding those 30 bed spaces, which could otherwise be lost if standards kind of increase. The care home could potentially have to close or adjust their layout, which would reduce bed spaces otherwise. Proposals found acceptable in terms of ecology, arboriculture, drainage, highways, and all other matters. I will just mention again the residential amenity matter. This is something that we've given a lot of consideration to, given the addition is to the north of that dwelling and is single storey in height, as well as the degree of separation, which is about 6 metres. Officers feel that the proposal would not cause such harm as to create conflict with policy D6. Obscure glazing has been, a condition has been attached to ensure obscure glazing on windows, which could potentially afford intervisibility. So that issue is addressed, and likewise, where air source heat pumps have been proposed, a condition has been attached to make sure that they're installed in a manner which doesn't result in inappropriate noise. The impact of noise from developments is also regulated through other legislation, including environmental protection. For these reasons, the proposal overall is found to constitute or found to cause less than substantial harm, and the conservation officer said that's at the upper end of the scale due to the extent of works and the scale of the development. Officers think that it actually falls kind of at the midpoint of less than substantial harm, and consider that in either instance the amount of public benefits that this proposal delivers would outweigh that harm. For that reason, officers find that the proposal is compliant with planning policy and therefore recommends that the planning permission is permitted and listed building consent granted.
Thank you, Chris. I need to check some of the data answers officer before I bring public speakers in a moment. I have Dr. Philip Cloud and Emma Sterry on to speak. They don't want to be filmed in this meeting, but do you understand your voices will still be recorded? Okay. In that case, you'll have 6 minutes between you to speak.
So good afternoon. I'd like to begin by saying that we enjoy living next door to Stanton Court, and I've always had a really positive relationship with the manager and staff. The Conservation Officer has advised that this proposal sits at the higher end of less than substantial harm to a highly sensitive Grade 2 star listed building and its conservation area setting. According to her report, the proposal would need to demonstrate public benefits that are commensurately high. I'd like to highlight 5 key points of the committee's consideration. First, Stanton Drew has operated successfully as a care home for over 30 years. It serves the local community, has a waiting list, provides a number of ensuite rooms, and is rated good by the CQC. The latest CQC report raises no concerns about the building's suitability or layout for its use as a care home. Second, the CQC does not prescribe minimum room sizes or a requirement for ensuite facilities. It refers to Regulation 15 of the Health and Social Care Act, focusing on safety, suitability, cleanliness and maintenance. The frequently cited minimum room size derives from guidance for new care homes or extensions and does not prevent Stanton Court from continuing to operate within its existing building. Third, the Statement of Need identifies issues such as the roof, stonework, windows and a faulty lift. These are matters of repair and refurbishment, which are the owner's responsibility regardless of this planning application. They do not justify development that increases the footprint and harms the significance of a Grade 2 star listed building and its setting. Fourth, the proposal represents an approximately 80% increase in volume. It would be constructed extremely close to the rear of the listed building and sunk 3 metres below ground. Given the building's rubble stone walls and lack of foundations, there is a real risk of structural harm here. Finally, this committee has already granted outline permission for a new 84-bed care home in Porton, just 7 miles away. That scheme will be subject to fewer constraints and will be capable of meeting the full range of local needs. The proposal before you today does not increase capacity. So the suggestion that Stanton Court might be forced to close if permission is refused prevents, in my view, an unfair ultimatum. Country Court chose to purchase a functioning care home within a Grade 2 star listed building in a conservation area, fully aware of the constraints that would come with such a designation. These constraints are accepted by both the CQC and also, more importantly, the local community. For these reasons, I do not believe the public benefit in this case is high, even commensurately high, and I respectfully ask the committee to refuse this application. Thank you.
Okay, Julie speaking.
Good afternoon. I live with my family immediately adjacent to Stanton Court. We urge you to reject this application because it inflicts significant heritage harm for zero public benefit. Stanton Court does not need a new building in order to update facilities inside the original house. I would like to make 4 points to justify my view. Point 1, lack of public benefit. In years to come, regardless of whether the application is permitted or not, Stanton Court will continue to support up to 30 residents. The proposed new building does not go any way to support Baines in meeting its care home targets. There is no increase in public benefit by voting in favour of this proposal, as the number of bedrooms will remain the same. Public benefit needs to be separated out from business benefit. Point number 2, harm to the conservation area. The Conservation Officer objected to the proposal as the harm to the conservation area is very high. What does it mean to live in a conservation area in Baines for it to be turned into a building site? The proposal is a disproportionate increase of 82.4% the size of the original building. The proposal does not conserve, preserve and enhance the conservation area as the Council is legally bound to do. Development will take a minimum of 18 months and the new building will have a life expectancy of just 50 years. The question on underpinning raised by the Conservation Officer has not been resolved. The developers are proposing to excavate bedrock to a depth of 3 metres. Rock, not soil, rock. This does not increase biodiversity. Point 3, noise and vibration. By the structural engineer's own admission, they do not know how to safely excavate the lower depths, keeping a watching brief. This leaves our historic home and Stanton Court defenceless against months of unmitigated vibration and noise. The sound of the test boreholes being dug by a power hammer was overwhelming. How noisy will the sewage pumping station be, which we use to lift foul water from 3 metres down to the existing level of the sewage network, and where will it be located? No information has been provided. We will be impacted by the bank of industrial-sized air source heat pumps located under our bedroom window, which will run 24 hours per day. This proposal will result in unacceptable noise and disturbance. Finally, unmitigated drainage obstruction. By sinking this massive structure into the ground, the developer is creating a plug in the natural flow of water down the hillside to the River Chew. An impenetrable barrier is being created between the two properties. Soakaway studies were inconclusive. This risks water backing up to our property and increasing dampness, and this is a loss of amenity. In conclusion, this proposal is contrary to policy HE1 of the placemaking plan as highlighted by the Conservation Officer and policies D6 and PCS2 of the placemaking plan for loss of amenity to noise and vibration, and policy SD4 in the Stanton Drill Neighbourhood Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let you run over slightly. Chris, Vance, please. You have 6 minutes, but I'll let you run slightly over as well. You need to. Have you done?
Members, the prime objective with this proposal is a qualitative upgrade of the accommodation within Stanton Court. In its present state, it's antiquated, and the lack of en-suite sanitary facilities for all rooms is a key issue. This scheme is not about any increase in bed space. It's purely about a qualitative upgrade. The investment in this scheme by the applicant in terms of the financial investment and the time that's been put into this is purely about that qualitative upgrade. I do trust the site visit on Monday was useful for the members to see the current situation at the site. We, as a consultancy, and I'm going to repeat this word a couple of times in my speech, have worked with huge passion to achieve that qualitative upgrade. I've looked at my diary. We started this process 4 years ago, March 2022, over 4 years. We commenced with 2 rounds of pre-application consultation. We included Historic England within that, and that was an incredibly positive process. We are committed to those kinds of engagement and enable us to refine and refocus the scheme. And the final scheme that we achieved through that pre-application positive stage of engagement was the scheme that's before you today. As with a scheme of this nature, there's a plethora of technical and support documents that we've prepared and included with the application. And that has been part of the reason for the time it's been taken to assess, because those are issues which need to be dealt with thoroughly. And whenever any queries have been raised or matters raised, we've diligently as a team worked together with the officers and the specialist advisors and supply that information. So you've got the final report before you today. And I'd just like to highlight the key issues from that report, just to run through these. We have the principle of the care accommodation in this location being fully compliant with policy H1. It's in the Greenbelt, but as set out in the report, this policy comprises of a Great Belt policy and is appropriate development in the Greenbelt. There'll be no harm to the landscape characteristics. We've carefully ensured that the amenities of any neighbours are respected as a result of the design. There's no transport issues arising, no increase in intensity. We fully recognise the importance of a construction management plan. We've submitted such a document. The final version will be agreed by a condition, and again we'll work passionately to ensure that is a thorough document to minimise as much as possible the impact during the construction phase. We've ensured the trees are fully protected within the site.
In terms of ecology, I'll just say this, we've worked our socks off in terms of having to supply the range of information that you need to with a current modern planning application in terms of dealing with ecology issues. And in terms of sustainable construction, which is a key part of the design, the ethos of the scheme, we've met all those requirements. Now, there's one other issue, clearly, heritage impact. Now, again, that has been part of our passion of this scheme. And you'll see the visuals, I think, are tremendous in terms of just communicating what is being proposed with the scheme. And we've ensured throughout that we have this objective of meeting a qualitative upgrade with the heritage sensitivity. It's a contemporary approach. It's blending modern with traditional. You have that in Bath. You have that on the first scheme with the Fashion Museum. You see it elsewhere in Bath. You see it at the Holborn Museum. We've got this principle here. We are unashamedly modern. We realise that. But this is what's key with that. It's got to have the quality. And the quality is there with this scheme, in our view. And I say that's part of the passion. We want to create a upgrade with a stunning visual approach to that. So, in conclusion, members, that's my representation today. I've set out the context for this. It's all about qualitative upgrade. We've worked our socks off with the officers over 4 years to get to this stage. It's been a long journey. There's now an exciting opportunity with the lifespan of this property as a new chapter. It's in an antiquated stage now. The decision today will enable that new chapter to move on and that accommodation to be enhanced significantly. So, my final comments, please, members, are to follow the recommendations in your officers' reports and grant planning permission and listed building consent for the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We now got a statement of Ward Councillor David Harding will be read by Karina Haskins.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a statement from Councillor David Harding. While I do not object in principle to the expansion of the care home, I am deeply concerned about the potential impact on the construction on the neighbouring properties at Court Farm and the wall at the Rookery in Church Lane, and I therefore object to the current application on the basis of loss of amenity. Preliminary engineering tests cause considerable vibrations and noise within the neighbouring property at Court Farm. Court Farm is constructed without foundations, as was typical at the time of construction. The party wall at the adjacent property, the Rookery, has several very wide and long cracks. The developers have stated that further excavation into the mudstone sandstone bedrock is likely to be needed, but the effects have not been quantified. Construction noise and vibration monitoring are essential components of responsible construction practices, but this cannot be done alone. This cannot be done without the potential effects on surrounding buildings and properties being modelled. The surrounding buildings have not even been inspected, and visual surveys to thoroughly document the condition of neighbouring properties have not been made. Thus, there has been no assessment of the risk of damage to the neighbouring properties and potential permanent loss of amenity, other disturbance policy D6, despite my objection and those of residents on these grounds in June 2025. It should be noted that the proposed care home extension, Stanton Court Care and Nursing Home Stanton Drew Interpretive Ground Investigation Report, states that adequate support should be provided to any excavation that may affect the stability or integrity of adjacent structures, roads or services, affording particular consideration to the site boundaries and adjacent buildings. Not only should the pre-construction risks be assessed, but monitoring programmes to understand how construction activities may affect the adjacent properties in real time should be described, if the application is permitted, as part of the construction management plan. I would therefore ask the committee to reject the application until such assessments have been made and plans have been drawn up to manage the risks and their adequacy determined. If the committee is determined to permit the application, I request that as a condition of the permission, that such inspections, reports and plans be put in place prior to any construction work being allowed. I would also ask the committee to consider the noise from the air source heat pumps and the effect on the neighbours of Court Farm. These are planned to be positioned near the bedroom of Court Farm. The number of and type of air source heat pumps is not defined, such that any potential noise disturbance cannot be determined. I would ask the committee to be supplied this information before making any final decision, and I would ask the committee to specify that the air source heat pumps be baffled if no other location can be provided. So that, just to remind you, that was a statement from Councillor David Harding, a ward councillor.
Thank you. Questions for officers now? Anybody? Councillor Hansel.
Thank you, Chair. Right, just a couple of questions just to get us started. To do with the excavations and any condition on the construction taking place. Would it be the case that if there was evidence of harm taking place, of cracking or whatever, that work on the site would stop immediately and that would be investigated? Is that covered by the conditions that you've set out?
I haven't expressly dealt with it by condition. As I said, the applicant is aware that if further works are required beyond the scope of this application, for example, structural strengthening or underpinning, that will require a further listed building application. It's the applicant's responsibility to make sure that development's undertaken in a safe manner, and any impacts on the structural stability of adjoining properties would be a civil matter. The applicant is in the position that this is their asset, and if they undertake works such that they compromise the structural integrity of their asset, then they obviously have a considerable issue. So it's not in their interest to proceed without making sure that the development can be undertaken in a safe manner. As I mentioned earlier, we've sought information as far as we possibly can to come to a conclusion on this issue, and I believe that the developer team has worked very constructively to provide us with as much information as they can. Ultimately, at this point, the information that we need can't be provided at this stage. It would require excavation to the point where essentially it would need to be dug out. So we are forced to make a decision based on the information available to us, and as I say, I think given that the developer has a responsibility legally for avoiding harm to adjoining properties, and the severe consequences of damaging their own asset, it, on balance, to my mind, means that we can grant this planning permission and listed building consent and deal with it by a further application if need be.
Right, just a follow-up. I just want to be clear in my mind what our remit is as a planning committee and what is the remit of, say, building control. So are these matters to do with the excavations and what may or may not happen? Is that actually not our concern today because we're looking at planning sort of principles? Is it something that's left for building control to be confident about?
They are material in the extent that we're granting listed building consent for the works, and so if the works were going to have an impact on the listed building, that would need to be taken into consideration. And as I say, we've done that as officers to the fullest of our ability based on the information presented, and come to the recommendation that we have on that basis.
Councillor Jackson.
I think I may be about to answer my own question, but the question is there the provision for archaeology adequate what is going to happen if they find a Roman helmet down there or something?
Yep, so the Council's archaeological consultants have been consulted on the proposal. They consider that whilst it is in close proximity to obviously archaeological sites of significance, the likelihood is that this site has been disturbed in the past because of construction activity associated with the existing building. There is a condition that deals with archaeology. Any finds that may occur, they consider would be of local interest potentially. They're content with the proposal as it stands to grant permission from an archaeological point of view, subject to conditions.
Okay, I don't see any more questions in the room. Councillor Jackson?
We're going to be considering the extent of the public good and so on, and we've been informed about the upgrade to the facilities there. Does this home at the moment take Baines residents on I'm not quite sure how to put it, but on a means-tested basis? And could it be that this upgrade would also mean an increase in fees, and that they might not then take social action?
I'm not 100% sure of the answer to that question at this point. It may well be in the information on the application, but I think at the minute my understanding is that it does tend to take residents from the local area, and that's the intention to carry on. I think obviously fees would not be a material consideration for us today in terms of what residents may have to pay. I wouldn't consider that material to the planning merits of the scheme.
Okay, it's now the debate. Councillor Halsall.
Thank you. I think one of the main issues that's come out of the questions and the people who've spoken through the report is the fact it's a Grade 2 star listed building. Now, the Conservation Officer has suggested that there will be less than substantial harm, but it's on the harmful end of that spectrum. Now, it's not as if we are seeing a ballroom being built on the White House. You know, it is a completely different style of architecture, and it's subdued in the ground. And I agree that the approach being taken to be modern but high quality is the right way forward for this. So it will provide an upgrade to the facilities on offer, and that will, I think, be in the public benefit because it will make the home more resilient, more versatile. I would just like to say, what I'm going to say is I'll put forward a motion to support the officer's recommendation on both applications, but I would like to ask if we could delegate to permit to add an additional condition, if it's not already on then the recommendation, regarding the location and the impact of the air source heat pumps. Thank you.
For a seconder, Councillor Simon.
Yes, I'm happy to second it. I think the condition is satisfactory on air source heat pumps. It requires that they comply with the MCS planning standards. So I think discharging those conditions would need assessment against the standards to make sure that they don't disturb the neighbouring occupiers. I think it's important that care homes can upgrade their facilities. I don't think in 21st century non-en-suite care home facilities are suitable, and I think we should support them in providing a local resource to an adequately high standard, and even if it would increase the cost, which isn't material, I think the cost would be justified.
Councillor Halsall.
So I'll accept Councillor Simon's point, so I would like to recommend that we support the officer's recommendation as it stands.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any more speakers? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, in principle, I'm supportive of this. I mean, listed building doesn't mean that it should be a museum or a monument. These buildings have to be able to evolve, albeit sensitively, to serve the community, and I think that's what's being achieved here. The current status of this building, the constraints mean that it can't provide the level of service to these residents that they need and deserve. That said, I mean, there are some concerns raised, quite legitimate ones, about the effect on adjacent properties in terms of the building works. I've looked at the ground investigation reports, etc. I'm not qualified to judge whether the reports that have been provided are enough to provide that reassurance. And I suggest that if we are delegating to permits, that should be a consideration, whether further work is required to provide reassurance that this won't negatively affect the adjacent properties. I guess that's for someone else to decide. But in principle, I'm happy to support the application.
Councillor Halsall.
Thank you. Just briefly, yes, dignity in old age is very important, and I would hope, should I ever need to have a bed in a home like this, there would be an ensuite toilet. I see that as a minimum requirement for dignity in old age. Also, I would hope that when the works are going on and the building works, that if there's any issues, that they're dealt with straight away. This might just be a hope, but it could be that once the work's been done, it actually might make that all the structures there more stable than they even are now. So I will be supporting the motion.
Okay, any further speakers? There are none. We'll go to the vote on 55 full first. Those in favour? No. 56 LBA. Those in favour? No. Both carried, both approved. We are now on to item 7 at High Hall, the Street, Compton Martin.
Is that working okay for everybody? Perfect. So this application is for the property is High Hall in Compton Martin, and the proposal is erection of a single-storey replacement extension to the front of the dwelling, and some landscaping is also proposed as part of the application. Is that okay now? Perfect. So the application site is seen here. It is in the red line. It is located in the very heart of Compton Martin and the conservation area. The cottage itself dates back to late 18th, early 19th century. It is quite a simple cottage. It used to be two cottages historically, whereas now it is one single dwelling. As you can see, it is quite has a quite simple front elevation, and there is a front extension seen here from the 1970s. It is quite modest. It doesn't have a lot of architectural merit. However, it's quite modest in size and quite unassuming in appearance. I know that the site visit was not possible, unfortunately, on Monday, so I did include some photos, and I think that there are some quite a few photos on file as well. So this is the dwelling as seen from the street. As you can see, the dwelling is located on an elevated position in a corner plot. However, it is partly obscured from view due to hedge and a couple of trees. Here is another photograph. This was taken by my colleague. Oh, I'm so sorry. Absolutely. First one, so you sure? No, this is the shared one. Shall I try showing it again? Yes, please. Shall I just flick through? I think that will probably be the quickest. Apologies for this. Did you want me to show the slides that we've been through in full view? Hopefully now you can see it a bit better. Is that okay? Perfect. So yes, as I was saying, so this is the front elevation, and then this is the dwelling as seen from the street. And then this photograph was taken winter 2023 when during the withdrawn application. So I thought I would include it because you can see how visible the current existing front extension is. So these are the existing and proposed block plans. On the left-hand side, you can see the extent of the current extension. On the right-hand side, there is the proposed extension in purple. These are the existing elevations, front and side, again showing the existing extension, quite simple in character, quite following sort of... It dates back from the 1970s, so it does have it does obscure the historic sort of integrity of the cottage. However, it is quite modest, quite simple. This is the proposed front elevation of the proposed extension. It is outlined in purple. The proposed extension would be about 8 meters in width, so it would be wider than the existing one. It would also, if we look at it from the side, it would extend approximately 6 meters from the front elevation, which is more than double the existing extension. It would also, design-wise, it would be more elaborate. It would be more less unassuming. The agent has helpfully also included some rendered images. So here is the extension, what it would look like once it was finished. So we see the combination of materials being stone, charred timber cladding, and a metal roof, and some expanse of glazing. Yes, several more images as submitted, so this is what it would look like. I do note that some of the landscaping proposed, it would get rid of the current foliage on site. So this is what it would look like on approach. The officer recommendation is to refuse. It is the opinion of the officer that the proposed extension would present a large and inappropriate addition in terms of massing, in terms of materials. It is at odds with the cottage. It is too elaborate. It is overly large, and there is also obviously the impact on the non-designated heritage asset, which contributes positively to the conservation area. Whilst the High Hall is not readily visible from the street, it is noted that the hedging in a conservation area does not have any protection. So whilst the hedge is there at the moment, the hedge can be removed without any planning permission. And because the site is so elevated and so prominent, there is obviously a degree of concern of how visible that extension would be. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one public speaker, Barney Bonner, please. 3 minutes.
Good morning, committee members. I'm the agent for this application, which is for a single-storey front extension to replace an existing and very dilapidated structure that serves very little function at present, other than being an eyesore. The proposed extension is the only realistic opportunity for the applicant to create a space that directly connects the house to the garden area. At present, the garden and house are isolated elements with nothing to connect them. So this is not just a simple porch, but an area to enjoy the garden and connect to the outside spaces in a more holistic manner. The design follows the site's contours and topography to create an extension that sits comfortably in the landscape. The extension presents a simple stone facade towards any public view, which replicates the various stone retaining walls that are present on the steep slope and opens up to the more private garden areas. If the proposals were for a rear or side extension of the same design, it's likely these heritage comments would not have been made. It is not possible to extend to the rear or side of the house given the surrounding buildings, land ownership and topography. Most of the surrounding houses have large, clearly visible extensions and outbuildings, establishing clear planning precedents in the immediate area. The measurements given in the committee report do not portray an accurate picture of the scheme, as they measure to the roof overhangs and ignore the various setbacks to the walls, which help to break up the perceived scale and massing of the garden room. The proposed footprint is 4.9 metres off the existing wall, and the width of the extension is 7.6 metres. The proposed extension has a lower roof height than the existing porch it is replacing. The proposed extension is only 1.7 metres longer than the current front extension, so less than 2 metres of the host building would be further obscured by this extension. The southern end of the extension is impossible to see from any external viewpoint unless they are physically standing in the rear garden. The building is not listed. The proposed extension cannot be clearly seen from any adjacent heritage asset or listed building. The cancelled site visit would have clearly demonstrated this to the councillors. There are many examples of approved applications within Baines that involve work on or near a non-designated heritage asset. We appreciate that every application is judged on its own merit. However, most of the approved applications involve more substantive works than this application. The Parish Council are in support of the proposals and state the new extension and garden work will clearly enhance the property. We support the application. There have been two comments in support of the application and 0 objections, which demonstrate this is not a contentious proposal. One of the supporting comments is from the former Mayor of Bristol and a renowned heritage architect, George Ferguson, who states as a conclusion, "I commend this low-impact proposal." In summary, the proposed extension is a high-quality design that uses local and natural materials to fit in with the landscape character and appearance of the local context. There will be minimal harm to any heritage features or the setting of the conservation area. We appreciate that this is technically a front extension, but believe a degree of common sense can be applied to the decision-making process given the site constraints. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions of officers, please? No. Councillor Hawthorne.
Ask what the enlarged extension is going to be used for. Obviously, it's not a porch. It's obviously going to be large enough to be a room. Is it a garden room, for example?
I believe that on the floor plans, it is described as garden room / day space.
Any other questions? No, none. Open for debate. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just trying to understand. There's in the report pack. There's quite a lot of information here from George Ferguson. And what capacity is he involved in this project? Because is he on behalf of Historic England, or is this his own personal comments?
It is his own personal comment. I believe that the applicant and the agent have reached out to George Ferguson to make an evaluation of the proposal based on his experience, but he's not acting on behalf of Historic England. He's just there to support the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll debate. Councillor Simon.
I'm going to move that we delegate permit this application and test the view of the committee. My starting point is that this has local support in the view of the Parish Council. It's a limited extension to which somebody has given a lot of attention in trying to get the best possible design. It's a small property, and enlarging small properties seems to me to provide public benefit sufficient to outweigh less than substantial harm to a non-destination heritage asset in a conservation area. So I think the balance comes down in favour of delegating to permit this application.
Councillor Warren?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's good to see the applicants have listened to what the local people want, the parish council especially, who are now in favour of it. I drive past this regularly, and I don't think it caused an issue. So, to be honest with you, I'm very happy to second Toby's proposal.
Councillor Malloy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in principle, I don't object to a mix of modern and older style. However, I'm not sure about the choice of material for the roof, if that is in keeping. But as I would support delegate to permit, with a proviso to have another look at the material for the roof in particular.
Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I do think the officer's conclusions are correct in terms of policy and all the other aspects we should be considering. The roof is a concern. I think it's nice that the brickwork is designed to match the property, but it is an improvement on the 1970s current structure. So there is some enhancement there. So it's a difficult one to know whether to support or not.
Councillor Horsell?
We should never go lightly against the recommendation of an officer. Obviously, the officer's the professional, and this has been subject to detailed scrutiny, particularly with the conservation officer as well. We've just had a discussion, haven't we, about a contemporary extension on a Grade 2 star listed building, and that went through unanimously. This is not listed. It is a non-designated heritage asset, so the less than substantial harm is on the far end of the spectrum in terms of less harm. The scale of it, I mean, I think as the agent said, if it had been on the back of the house, it wouldn't have been an issue. The fact is that it's unusual to have large front extensions on properties, but it is constrained in terms of its curtilage, and it is elevated. Now, my next-door neighbours recently built an extension on the back of their house, and I just told them it looks like the reception to a branch library. I did initially react in that way with this one, but actually, I think it will be successful on that frontage, and I think we need to give weight to the fact that there is public support, particularly from the parish council. So I'll be supporting it, supporting the motion.
Councillor Hensel?
Just to say that I agree with Councillor Hughes in that this is quite a difficult one to think through, in that the officer has produced a good report, and I think her conclusion is probably right in terms of policy, but policy is always bound to be general, and we're looking at a unique location with particular circumstances. So it's a marginal decision in my view, but I am happy to go with the proposal to delegate to permit, but recognising that the officer has made a very professional approach to this.
Okay, a motion on the table, delegate to permit. Those in favour? That's unanimous. That's delegated to permit.
Briefly, just to say that I endorse what colleagues have said about the report, and that it's a well-structured report. It does stick to policy. So please send it personally.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Item 9, appeals reports. Any comments, anybody? Councillor Simon? Okay, nobody at all. Quality Performance Report. Councillor Simon.
This report includes statistics on enforcement, and I'd just like briefly to report to this committee remarks made by Councillor Wright at the Corporate PDS Committee last night, where she spoke about a discussion she'd had with the enforcement team who'd indicated that they weren't able to make progress with an enforcement case that she'd raised because of resource shortage, effectively. The caseloads were too big. And I do notice that in the numbers, the number of enforcement cases, while we are clearing about as many as are launched, the stock amounts to a good 18 months' worth of casework. I think it's important that officers should look at resources for enforcement, because if we don't enforce, people will not take the decisions of this committee and of the authorities seriously.
Thank you, Councillor Simon. Councillor Horsall.
I'd just like to say very quickly, some really good statistics from Q4 in terms of determined applications within the statutory time frame, all over 80%. And also, I note, where are we? The appeals from January to March this year, 81% of those appeals were dismissed. So excellent work to Sarah's team and all the officers affected.
Councillor Hensel.
Just very briefly, just like to give my support to the comments that Councillor Simon has just made. It is a concern that the number of outstanding cases seems to be stuck at around 500 to 600 every quarter. And with the best intentions and hard work of the enforcement team, who are dealing with a lot of cases, and sometimes very complex cases, we're not getting that figure of 500 down, and that's something we really should be doing. And maybe a comment, a reference from this committee might persuade people in charge of resources to think about allocating more officers to the enforcement team.
Thank you. I'm sure we all agree with that. Okay,
AOB, please. Just to say, I'm stepping down from the planning committee after 3 years, so I just want to thank colleagues for how we've debated and considered applications, and thank you, Chair, for your work over the past year. We've achieved some quite important decisions in terms of the REC, Luxbrook. We managed to negotiate with Sulis Down, so carry on with the good work. I'll still be subbing though, so you won't be not seeing me again.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the work for the last 3 years. In that case, we're going to conclude the meeting, and we are now 1:10 Councillor Jackson, you want to continue the meeting? Quickly, Anne, please.
We're going to lose our colleague because he's contributed so much over the 3 years, but I'm sure that in another aspect of the Council's life he'll be contributing. What I wanted to ask was something. I know you can't turn to the right and you missed me waving my hand. Do we know why there's such a long delay between an applicant going to appeal and the actual judgment? I was working through all the dates and things, and sometimes
Sarah, I'm sure you know the
waited
answer.
2 years for a planning inspector to look at the case. I think it goes
no
back
politics
before
here,
that.
please, Councillor Warren.
And that's obviously...
The planning inspector may have various reasons for delays, which could include resourcing. Obviously, we're not privy to all of the details of how they run their operation.
Okay, you want to go home for lunch now. I'm sure you don't want to continue the meeting, so we close the meeting now. 11 minutes past 1 of them, correct? The next meeting is on the 10th of June. Site visits will take place this week, time on the 8th of June.